So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to Jackson with Jackson 38, which is spelled wrong in the thumbnail, but right in the title. This one is called a new video because I don't have an imagination and we're looking at a new video. So that's what that is.
Yeah, new video.
Yeah, I tried to make it look a little bit like Star Wars-y, I guess, kinda. I don't know. Yeah. Jackson, how are you today? You're muted, that's how.
I am doing pretty good, actually, as always.
All right. Good to hear. I like it when my guests or co-hosts or whatever are doing well, and I guess you're a co-host.
It's been,
Yeah.
pretty. It's not been a crazy day. It's been pretty chill. It's been kind of a crazy week, but it's fine.
Okay. Well, I mean, sometimes weeks get crazy. It happens. It's okay.
True.
You know, I had a weekend. I have to thank Joshua Geese, who may or may not be in the chat right now. Nope, looks like he is. So Joshua Geese got me, I'm going to try and remember everything, and I'm probably going to fail. Okay. So he got me the Tales from the Loop RPG core rulebook, one expansion about machines and robots, the GM screen for the same, Things from the Flood, an art book by Simon Stålenhag, who's one of my favorite current artists out there. I've loved everything from him I've seen, so appreciate that. And actually, the Tales from the Loop RPG is based on his art book, Tales from the Loop. So there you go. I also got the Pangenesis core rulebook, which is a 5e compatible high fantasy TTRPG that is set in a Stone Age setting. But not like a real Stone Age, more of a like 50s sci-fi version of the Stone Age. So like there's cavemen and T-Rexes and woolly mammoths and whatnot, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like the age of the prehistory, which is all one time, and all of prehistory happens at the same time. That kind of thing, which I like from an aesthetic standpoint, and because it's a fantasy role-playing game, I do not care how inaccurate it is, because this game also has wizards and dragons. So, like, whatever. Have a Stegosaurus fight a T-Rex. Who cares? So, let's see. He also got me, a Carolina Reaper summer sausage, some habanero beef jerky sticks, garum from Spain, white truffle oil, and I think I covered it, but I feel like I'm now forgetting a whole bunch of stuff. So if I did forget some stuff, Josh, just please let me know.
Flavored chips for the first time.
How were they?
It is an interesting flavor.
Okay. I mean, I really like truffle oil.
It's fine. It's a lot. It's very savory.
I put truffle oil in my ramen today.
That is a choice.
I was like, you know what? This is gonna be the fanciest ramen. A little bit of truffle oil. We got a couple things to read. Staryu, who's been a member for 20 months and is at the amnio level, says, "I wonder if Bad Jackson is going to be filming from Mexico again today." /J. While it was just a joke, I will let you know. No, he is not going to be filming from Mexico. There will not be a piss filter today. Goopdo3 for $5 says, "For something that apparently died in 2005, Old Earth Evolution is looking pretty good. And AIG is a dickbag." We'll take a drink for that, thank you. Yeah, you know, Jackson and I were just mentioning that earlier, like, hey, if Old Earth Evolution died 20 years ago at this point, you know, little under, no one seems to have noticed that, like, at all. In fact, I would argue that Old Earth Evolution hasn't gone anywhere. What do you think, Jackson?
I think that is certainly one possibility. It could be the case someone here is misinformed or uninformed or lying. I mean, it's hard to say, but
yeah,
it's probably one of those.
Becca Justiniano, who has been a member for, sorry, got a cough, 13 months, and is at the Tetrapod level, says, I'm celebrating a big success tonight with a Mothra. We'll take a drink for that Mothra. Thank you very much. And congratulations. I don't know what your success is, but I am glad that you had one, because I wish people well in general. I'm a well-wishy sort of guy. So, yeah. Overall, if I know of you only that you exist, I hope good things happen to you. It takes a fair bit for me to wish people ill, but it can and does happen. There are people I wish ill. But I don't think any one of them is in the chat. So, alright, so we are here to take a look at Charles Jackson, who is a young earth creationist with how many degrees, Jackson?
I think it's 4.
Now, that's one more than most of the evolutionists he talks to, right?
Yes, that is
Okay.
what he likes to say. That's his
All
favorite
right.
line.
Well, that does make him more qualified at everything, I suppose, right?
He's like an engineer.
Yeah.
You know, once you become an engineer, you know everything.
Oh, Becca Justiniano, you got your mom's autistic husband to express his opinion on his own tonight. Well, nice. That is not an easy thing to do, so congrats. I hope that he wasn't too uncomfortable doing that. Yeah. Meldeborn says, the last person I remember Dapper wishing ill was Casey Luskin.
You know what? So true. So fair.
That's the last one I publicly issue will, at least. Well, it's not even public. It's just available to the people who have early access to my scripted videos. Which, by the way, I am working on the sequel to that right now. I have about a little bit more than a third of the script done. It's less than half, so somewhere between a third and half, basically. So, hopefully,
I agree with that assessment.
Yeah, Casey Luskin and the DI generally are people who should suffer because of the suffering, all sorts of ways. Yeah. Because of their direct enabling of the a regime which will direct suffering at people who do not deserve it.
Because they are Christian nationalists at the end of the day.
Yep.
Like, explicitly.
Yep.
It's what they do.
It's also who pays them.
Yeah. Yep. Their names were on Project 2025, but they were cowards, so they removed their name.
Yeah. But you know what? Neither Pepperidge Farms nor I have forgotten, because we both remember. My Unfinished Journey, who's been a member for 21 months, is at the amnio level, says, woo, big high five to Becca Justiniano. And agreed. All right, so, this is a talk, obviously, that Charles Jackson gave on March 25th, 2005, so now we know when it was. So, anything that happened after 2005, we can't blame him for not knowing, but we can say you are wrong in your predictions or your conclusions or whatever because we now have new information, right? So, for instance, I'm not going to blame him for not knowing about, I don't know, like Homo naledi. Or wasn't Australopithecus sediba like described like 10 years after this?
Possible, I'm not sure on the...
I'm not positive, but like I know that there have been a lot of much more recent finds in like human evolution, in like dinosaurs, birds.
Recently named hominin within our own genus.
Ooh.
Homo, what was that guy?
Oh yeah, there was a new one.
What was that new species?
I don't know.
Human.
Tell you what, you look that up while I go through the rules for the drink.
Homo juluensis. I probably mispronounced that.
Possibly. Well, I'm going to describe the rules because we do this as a drinking game. You've already seen us have 2 drinks for the drinking game. So, the ones that you have seen were 1, we will take a drink anytime anyone super chats or membership milestone chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks. And that, you do have to be a little bit clever. We do have some emojis to help you out with that. So, Fearmonger says, who's been a member for 25 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, a hex upon the American NSDAP with an AIG's bag of dicks emoji and a drink emoji, and we will take a drink for it. Thank you. And yeah, and like, look, you can quibble with me that like they don't have the exact same underpinnings as the NSDAP, and in fact, they're far more explicitly pro-Christian than the NSDAP was, especially since the NSDAP had that like sort of on the DL project to replace Christianity with a reconstructed form of Germanic paganism. But like, And I'm pretty sure that's not on the to-do list for the Discovery Institute. But like, those are pretty minor distinctions that I don't really care about.
Mm-hmm.
Like at all. So yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. So we will also take a drink anytime anyone super chats or membership milestone chats anything that contains the kaiju emojis we have for channel members. That includes Mothra, Godzilla, and King Ghidorah. Also, if either Mothra or Godzilla come by audibly, which might happen, we will take a drink for that. We will also take a drink for gifted memberships. So if you give a membership, we'll take a drink. If you give 5, we'll take 5. If you give 10, we'll take 10. If you get 50, I'm just going to finish this glass of whiskey and cola and then go get another glass. Because I'm not going to count out 50 individual drinks. So there is that. Let's see. We will also take a drink if Charles Jackson says something that is just so dumb we have to take a drink to cool our brains off. Brain coolant. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson says something that is factually accurate and it's not just him reading from some source. If it's actually in his brain, then he speaks it. We take a drink for that. We will also take a drink if Charles Jackson tells a joke that does not land or tells a story that did not happen. Now, that is a bit of a judgment call, right? How do we know the story didn't happen? Well, if it sounds like it should go on r/that happened, or if it ends with and then everyone clapped, or and then he came to Jesus and it doesn't seem plausible, yeah, we're probably going to take a drink for that. And if it does seem plausible, like I've had plenty of times when my audience has said like this is a story that didn't happen, and I'm like, I'm not willing to call it. So I'm usually pretty conservative on that one. Whereas gets things right, I tend to get much more loosey-goosey with that one by the end, because we usually don't have too many of those. We'll also take a drink if Dr. Charles Jackson mixes up anything we can know about any taxon to which Lucy belonged that is bigger than just, herself, the individual, and mixes up what we can know about the larger taxon based on what we can know just because of Lucy's specimen, right? So if he's like, we don't know if Australopithecus had inline big toes because Lucy wasn't preserved with toes. That's a drink trigger. We call that an ad hominid. Can only happen once per stream. Mostly because once they do it once, they're going to keep doing it constantly for a little while, and I don't want to just chug this whiskey cola. So, yeah. There is also Trojan source. If Charles Jackson cites a source, we look up the source, and then not only does the source fail to support him, which is pretty typical, if it actively contradicts him, that's called a Trojan source, and we take a drink for that. The king of Trojan source, by the way, is Randy Galuza. I don't think that man has ever cited a source that wasn't a Trojan source.
That's probably true.
It's surprisingly true. Like, I've gone through
so bad.
all of his sources for one of his talks, and every single one of them actually countered his basic goal of saying we got to get rid of like natural selection. So
I did a thing with RN one time, and we were looking at it was a guy talking about continuous environmental tracking, which is his thing, and he cited a source that said word for word, just the exact opposite of what he claimed. He claimed that that if you grew Mexican cave tetras in the presence of light, they would regrow eyes. The paper literally says growing Mexican cave tetras in the presence of light has no effect on their eyes.
Yeah,
it literally just says that.
Yeah, it was actually hybridization, proving the direct opposite of what he was trying to claim, which was just amazing. Sheena Math is made up numbers. Keller for $4.99 says, and then he came to Jesus. It was Jesus' first bukkake party. Thank you for making me say that. That with no hint of sarcasm. All right, we will also take a drink if Dr. Charles Jackson mentions that group of people whom Casey Luskin seems to be getting his marching orders from beyond the grave. That is that German party from the 1930s into the 40s. If he mentions them, we'll take a drink. Now, note, that does not mean he has to violate or become an example, I suppose, of Godwin's law. He just has to mention them. We will also take a drink if either Jackson or I can successfully predict what he's about to say next. And I think we covered it. Jackson, do you know of any that we didn't cover?
Not offhand.
All right. So, I do have one quick thing, which is to say, hey, I recently acquired myself a copy of the Elite model from Halo 2 Anniversary Because when you guys voted that my next avatar should be I do what I want, that's what I wanted. And I know that some people in my Discord have said that they would pay money to see me speak in the conlang that was created for the Halo TV show for that species. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to set a super chat goal. If in the next 2 hours we can get 20 teal super chats, I will speak Haley in my next video with an elite avatar. So there you go. So if you want to see me try to pronounce lots of adjectives, because that language is full of adjectives, because of course it is. Thanks, David J. Peterson. Yeah, now you know how to do it. All right, Jackson, are you ready for some Jackson?
I am the most ready.
All right, here we go.
But thank you all for coming, and without any further ado, Sir Charles. Oh, Dr. J.
Yeah, I have no idea why he said Sir Charles. As far as I know, Charles Jackson isn't a knight anywhere, but whatever.
I was talking to my brother Chris over there about his hat. Random acts of fashion. That's what he's got it because he had a different hat on last night. I've got my own random act of fashion tonight. This was given to me, this shirt here was given to me by one of my board of directors.
Oh, I was just alerted. I did miss his milestone chat. Joran Anthropon Dax, who's been a member for 17 months, said AIG are an Andrew's appendage assortment, and I'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much. So, my apologies. Look, please alert me if I seem to miss a super chat. Because you know what? It happens, or milestone chat. It happens occasionally, and I don't try to, but like, I really want to get them. So.
Who lives in Chillicothe, Ohio, and it says here,
that sounds fake.
Freud is dead, Marx is dead, and Darwin isn't feeling very well.
Yeah, we've seen this shirt before.
Sure he's dead. I'm pretty sure Charles Darwin is not walking the earth anymore.
Yeah, it's supposed to be about their various ideas, and like, none of them actually have had their ideas completely dismissed. I mean, there aren't too many people who are just like pure disciples of any of them, right? Because I mean, obviously they got things wrong. They were writing about things hundreds of years ago when they didn't know as much, and we know that they got some things wrong. But like, their ideas aren't gone. Like, for instance, Karl Marx's ideas about class consciousness and class conflict and who's oppressing whom. Those aren't
Those are
gone.
pretty relevant ideas right now.
They're actually especially relevant in the last week or two. Like,
Correct.
super extra relevant. So, you know. Does that mean that all of Karl Marx's ideas are super relevant? No. No, it doesn't. But, yeah, some of them sure are. Goop23 for $5 says, never played or watched Halo, but love seeing Conlangs and David J. Peterson. I actually interviewed David J. Peterson once for a college paper, primarily because I didn't actually want to write a paper. So I asked if I could interview a working linguist. And my professor was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So I just asked David J. Peterson a bunch of boring basic questions, and I turned it in, and I got an A. So
That's awesome.
Thanks, David J. Peterson. I really appreciate it from way back in the day. We actually were connected via like more than one Facebook group, so like I wasn't a complete stranger to him. I don't think he would know who I am, but like he would have been at least at the time familiar with seeing my Facebook profile around, like my personal one. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. It turns out I actually have like a presence in communities other than just this one, and under a persona other than just, you know, me.
And the icons of humanism, the leaders of humanism. So that's why
Are they though?
I don't know
Are
anyone who would say that those are the icons of humanism. Like, no.
I can't remember the last time I had a conversation about Freud with anyone, let alone an atheist.
Yeah,
Or a humanist.
Actually, Freud of those is probably the one whose ideas has the best chance of like reasonably being called dead, right? Like
Yeah.
what distinctive to Freud do we still accept? And I don't know if there is anything. But on the other hand, I don't know why anyone would call him like an icon or a hero of humanism. Roshan on Math has made up numbers color for 499 says, is Pangenesis truly dead? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's some people out there who would say no.
Yeah, there are some. You know what? I was under the impression that nobody was like oh shoot, what's his name? Was like Lysenkoist anymore. And then I saw some tankies on Twitter, and I was like, no, what is happening?
Yeah,
Get the heck out of here!
Tankies are gonna do that.
Just like genuinely unabashed Lysenko apologia is crazy stuff.
Especially given
Crazy
how many
stuff.
people it directly killed.
Yeah,
Like
it's crazy stuff.
it starved millions of people to death. Lysenko is in the running for like larger human death toll than Mustache Man from Germany.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration.
No, I'm pretty. I would be willing. Well, I guess if you want to say like his ideas, I would be willing to bet directly killed more people. I'd probably killed more
Now,
people.
was that his goal like it was for the Mustache Man? No, it wasn't.
Right.
His goal was the opposite. But you know what? When you're starving to death in the Ukraine as all your grain is being stolen by Soviet trains to be taken back to Moscow, it doesn't help a whole lot that the guy who's causing that didn't want to cause it. You're still starving to death.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the shirt actually because it's in the spirit of what we talked about last night and what we're going to talk about tonight.
I kind of want to know if he still has that shirt 20 years later.
It might be a little washed out by now. Or
Yeah.
have, like holes in it or something.
Or maybe he like kept it pristine because he only wore it to these talks, and like he had it carefully dry cleaned between talks. You know, it's possible.
It is certainly possible. Yeah.
I do like what Ron was talking about a little while ago. He said that, made that quote of there's three kinds of truth: your truth, my truth, and the truth. That's very interesting, and it's very relevant.
That's just code for I believe things, you believe things, and some things are true. It's not a very insightful anything, right? Everyone has beliefs. Some beliefs are false. Everyone, I'm sure, has false beliefs. But contrary, most people probably have true beliefs too.
No, don't you remember from the days of like YouTube atheism where like no, we don't have beliefs, we just have facts?
I
Don't
do
you
remember that, and I cringe every single time.
Weren't those days of glorious epistemology?
No, that was terrible and really, really dumb, and I really wish everyone would stop saying it, but it still happens every once in a while.
I haven't heard anyone say it in a while, but
Rail Gatubello for $2 says, AIG should be a Sonic ministry, not a bag of pingas, and we will take a drink. Thank you very much. And I will make sure I update the counter here. Oh, hey!
Oh, I forgot to say what I was drinking.
Oh, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Coke.
Nice. Full of caffeine, too?
Yeah, it's just some normal Coke.
Living on the wild side out here.
Wait, we're talking about Freud? We got Coke here? It's all coming together.
Uh-oh. Oh, by the way, for the first time ever, I believe, or maybe the second, getting bent pizza is less than getting me a fancy avatar.
Nice. We love getting bent pizza.
Everything we're talking about, the philosophy of science. I was talking to Danielle. Where are you still here, Danielle? About she said, well, it's hard to keep the Christianity and learn the science with Christianity in mind. And I said, well, now be careful not to do this.
I don't think it is, actually.
The thing is, it isn't unless your kind of Christianity is Charles Jackson's kind of Christianity. That's the thing, right? Charles Jackson's version of Christianity insists that science has to be wrong. Which means, when you learn science, it's going to conflict with your Christian beliefs if you're Charles Jackson's kind of Christian. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a problem. DM at Denver, Canada wing, who has been a member for 29 months and is at the amniote level, says, what does he have against Freud? AIG is a bag of dicks times 3, Godzilla times 3, Mothra times 3, and Ghidorah only times 2, but we will take a drink for that. I mean, what I have against Freud is mostly that he was wrong. What he has against Freud is probably like the focus on sex. He probably doesn't like that because, in addition to being anti-science, Charles Jackson's version of Christianity is also very, very prudish. They do not like talking about or thinking about the sex. Roshina Math has made up numbers Keller for 199 says, think RFK Jr. will bring back the cocaine and coke? I'll be honest, I have absolutely no predictions about that, except that if he's confirmed, it'll be bad. I fully expect a large number of American citizens to die over the course of the next 4 years who otherwise would not have died. And I am not terribly confident that I'm not among them.
Yeah, it's real bad, folks. It's real bad.
Yeah. I think there's a not a better than 50% chance, but like a not insignificant chance that I will die as a direct result of the policy of the next administration in the next 4 years.
Is it possible someone could not be in charge of, or sorry, is it possible someone could be in charge of health who, for instance, does not have brainworm?
No,
Is that possible?
that's not one of the
Do we have
options
that?
anymore. We changed the Constitution. Now all people who are in charge of healthcare in the United States have to be dead bear molesting, whale decapitating, brainworm infected morons.
Oh, well, that is oddly specific and sucks.
Yeah, and yet somehow RFK Jr. manages to meet all of those criteria.
Have you seen the like? It's not really Venn diagram is the wrong word. It has like has hole in head is dead, and it's a picture of JFK, and then it says has hole in head is not dead, and it's a picture of RFK.
I have not
that's
seen
quite
that
funny.
one. But Ray El Gatubello for $2 says Jackson denies Freud because he wants his mom. That's probably it. Yeah, you got that Oedipus complex going.
Oh, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
My
Yep.
mistake.
And you want to kill your dad, obviously.
I do like. Oh, there was a meme a long time ago. It's like a preacher leaning on a podium very excitedly, and it says Freud returns from the dead and finds out that girls call their boyfriends daddy.
Yeah. That's a pet name I've never really liked.
Christianity and science thing, because science is truth. Evolution.
No, science isn't truth in some abstract way, right? Science is a method of gathering knowledge and the knowledge thereby gathered. It is true only on a contingent basis, presuming that we do not find contravening evidence in the future. Everything in science is provisional. It is not true with a capital T. It's not the truth with a capital T. It is just the best explanation we have for natural phenomena that itself uses natural explanations, which can be tested and importantly falsified. That's it. It's not mystical.
Easy.
It's not magical. It's not some. That's just what it is.
That is crazy.
You don't have to like all of its conclusions, and you don't have to agree with them. And I'm sure some of them are wrong to some degree. But, like, yeah. Rail got to Beller for another $2 says, I only like daddy when Angel Dust says it. I'm going to hit play.
Isn't science. Don't equate evolutionary thinking with science. Evolution is a philosophy. It's evolutionism, as Ron was saying to us.
No, evolution is a theory within biology. And again, you don't have to like it, and you don't have to agree with it. But that's what it is. Now, philosophical naturalism, which is usually seen as pretty compatible with evolutionary biology, that's a philosophy. And if you want to have a discussion about philosophical naturalism, that's actually a separate discussion from a discussion about evolutionary biology, or evolution broadly, right? Because evolution could be true, and philosophical naturalism could be false. And, at least hypothetically, philosophical naturalism could be true, and evolution could be false, and there's actually some other explanation for how life naturally got to its current state. That seems unlikely, but that's only because, I know about things like the science. But it's not logically contradictory. Roshina, math is made up numbers, Keller. For 9.99 says, oh, and I'm supposed to sing this, but I don't know what the tune is. I'm so sorry. But I'll read it out, and I will note that I am failing you utterly by not knowing how to sing this. But Oedipus' mom was... Oh, it's to Stacy. Is it to Stacy's mom? I'm not even gonna try. Oedipus' mom hasn't got it going on. She's all I want. Wait, did I say mom? I mean Oedipus' wife. She's the love of my life. There's nothing wrong. My wife is probably not my mom. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, Oedipus Rex. I remember one time getting stared at by a professor because, like, he was mentioning Oedipus Rex and then offhandedly said, well, it's actually a Greek play, so it probably should be we should probably refer to it in Greek. And so I said, like, Oedipus Vasilevs. And next thing I know, he's, like, staring at me and asking me after class if I speak Greek. And I'm like, well, I know the word for king, if that helps. Yeah. And then later, when we had someone in to talk about something about, like, languages in India, I started asking questions about, like, which areas still had prominent Dravidian language speaking groups. And, like, once again, there were questions like, is this guy, like, an expert in India? And my professor's like, no, that's just Tim. Like, yep, that's just me. Joshua Geese for $5 said, just adding an ism to the end of a word doesn't make it so. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Just because you added the word, or the suffix ism, doesn't make it a philosophy, it doesn't make it a religion, it doesn't do any of those things. In fact, I would argue that creationism, despite having an ism on it, isn't a philosophy, and is just a part of some religions.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of you heard that this year we decided Pluto is not a planet? Haven't you even heard that? Yes, Pluto has been demoted.
Okay, I guarantee if you ask him, why do you think Pluto is no longer considered a planet, I can almost guarantee he would not know the answer.
Yeah. And of course, the thing is, that wasn't a decision about science. It was a decision about how we should talk about science in a way to not make it confusing. Right? Like, you could, without any contradiction, just include Pluto as a planet and say that a planet is anything that primarily orbits the sun. Okay, cool. The problem then is that instead of having like 8 or 9 planets, we now have like 400 planets. That seems inconvenient. Or you could say it's anything that's round under its own gravity and orbits the sun. Okay, well, we still have like over 100 of those. That makes it kind of inconvenient. There's nothing about science that changed, right? Like, if we were to go back and instead of changing the rules of taxonomy to keep Tyrannosaurus Rex, instead of making it, what is it, Dynamo Terror? Or whatever it was? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that would do for the science of Tyrannosaurus Rex? Nothing. It would just mean that now you have to keep in the back of your mind that when you read older sources and you see Tyrannosaurus Rex, they actually mean, oh, it was Dinosaurus imperiosus. Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That doesn't change anything about the animal. It doesn't change the conclusions of any of the papers. It doesn't do anything. That's just a little squabble between humans about how to talk about science. It doesn't change the data. It doesn't do anything to science. And the thing is that the fact that Charles Jackson is pretending that this is science being silly or not being able to trust science because it's going to change is itself him just not understanding what science is about at a very fundamental level. We're going to take a drink for it. And then Rail Gatubella for $5 says, Oedipus Rex in Greek is Oedipus... Wait. Oh, is it Tyrannos? Is it tyrant? Okay. Hey, there you go. I didn't actually look it up. That word used to mean king, but it got its negative connotation from Plato. Well, I thought the big difference between Tyrannos and Vasilevs was that a tyrant was not a hereditary position, whereas Vasilevs was traditionally hereditary. But then again, I am not a Greek scholar, so, like, don't take my word for that. Because, yeah. Not an expert on the language. Or any language, for that matter. Not even English. Although I did take an ACE Old English and History of the English Language, which were a big contributor to me getting a Renaissance and Medieval Studies minor, which is why I have that minor without ever actually really having looked too hard into that period, which is weird. But my old English professor, who was like in charge of getting that minor in like to be a thing in the school, was like, hey, you're like 2 classes away from this minor. You should totally go for this minor. Because it's my minor, and I want people to take it so that they don't get rid of it. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? So I took a few extra English lit classes that counted, and there you go. I had the minor.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, look, she was a cool professor, so I was happy to help her out with that.
Demoted to like planetesimal, planetoid, or
Dwarf planet, man. Dwarf planet. Which you'll notice also still has the word planet in it.
asteroid. There, you know all about that, don't you? Yeah. Well, you know what? Pluto doesn't care.
Did he add an extra syllable to Pluto?
Pluto?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said Pluto. That's weird, but whatever.
Well, my sister often says she is freezing, so I understand.
Okay.
It just, that's 40 times the distance away from the sun that we are. It's way, way far out there. And, Pluto is just, I probably haven't heard about it. If Pluto is just gone.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that the inanimate chunk of ice and rock has not heard anything.
On like it always has and really doesn't care. And when we argue about the nature
Take a drink, that was true.
the origin of the universe and all the meaning and the truth and how the world got started and how life got started and how the universe got started and what happened at the Big Bang, you know what? All of that is history.
No, it's almost all prehistory.
That's true. Yeah, it's not recorded. Yeah.
Yeah, history starts when humans start writing things down. Now, that is a somewhat arbitrary distinction. And there are people who are from cultures that are only recently literate that, find that distinction to be in poor taste. And I get that. But that's the thing. It's a fundamentally arbitrary distinction, and it's the one that historians have made to distinguish what is history versus prehistory, because history is self-consciously about the texts that humans write about the events that went on in the past, which for them were not necessarily the past. That could have been more like their present. And while history consults with things like paleontology, archaeology, geology, all that stuff, right? It is primarily about the texts. The sources in history are the texts. If you don't have texts, you're not doing history. Doesn't mean you're not doing good work. It doesn't mean you're not learning about the past. It doesn't mean you're not right. It just means that the part of academia you're in isn't history. And that's great, because there's a lot of cool things that aren't history. In fact, I would say most of the cool things out there aren't history. So, there you go. Is oral history prehistoric, says Don Giovanni, Emir of Hakan. So there you have stepped into one of the more contentious areas, because historians do love a good oral history, but it technically is questionable as to whether or not it counts as a primary source at all, and generally it doesn't count as a source until it's written down by a historian who bothers to record it. So the answer is often yes, but not always yes, is the answer to that question. So yeah. Of course, the more recent the oral history is, the better. And in fact, many oral histories are actually created by historians who go out and interview people to gather oral histories by just asking them about a part of their lives with like a recorder and just hitting record and letting them talk into the microphone and just describe whatever part of their life is under investigation. When it comes to oral traditions from pre-literate or only recently literate cultures, where that is still the primary way that they transmit stories about their past, that is taken with a grain of salt. And the degree to which it's treated as history versus it usually falls under historians doing it, but it's one of those things where technically you might say that this is more like inspiration for archaeology than it is strictly history, but there's a lot of overlap there, and I'm sure plenty of historians would disagree and say, no, that's definitely history. But yeah, it's a gray area is basically the answer. Vandalia 1998 for $4.99 says, random question, if the true mitochondrial Eve is the first eukaryote that kidnapped the bacteria that's became it. Who was the first true Y chromosome? So first, that would not likely be the mitochondrial eve of all extant eukaryotes, right? Chances are that there was some organism after the first cell to capture like a rickettsia bacteria and then use it for its own metabolic purposes. Chances are there's some organism after that actually became the common ancestor of all extant mitochondria, like the most recent common ancestor of all mitochondria. So that probably wouldn't be the quote-unquote mitochondrial eve of all of extant eukaryotes. It would almost certainly be something much later. But also, when it comes to the Y chromosome, well, the Y chromosome seems to be something that evolved within because, if I remember correctly, monotreme sex determination is much more complicated and does not involve a single Y chromosome versus a single X chromosome. So it seems like that sex determination strategy evolved in Theria, which is the metatherians or the marsupials, and the eutherians or the placentals, who are together more closely related to each other than they are to the monotremes. But then again, it also means that, it probably wasn't someone who was a member of the first species of therians, right? Like, it was probably something later, because, that's just statistically. So, like, there's no way to actually tell, because, like, that's so long ago that we probably can't get good estimates for that. But, it probably wouldn't have been the actual common or first organism to evolve these traits that we associate with either Theria or with, being a eukaryote. So, all right, here we go.
It's historical. There is a way that it all happened, and it doesn't change just because someone's winning an argument here, sitting on a park bench or debating in a...
I mean, yeah, he's right.
He's saying that because he's very mad that he lost in a debate on a park bench.
Well,
that's why he's saying this.
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance that's true. But I mean, what he's saying is technically not wrong, right? We'll take a drink. Whether or not, the debate is going on, and no matter who's right or wrong about the debate, what actually happened in the past is what happened in the past. But the question is, if you want to know about that and discuss that, you have to use things like reason and evidence and deduction and whatnot, because otherwise, how are you going to figure it out? And my Unfinished Journey for $6.66 says, Hail Nero, Hail Daps, and Good Jacks, and down with Tirvanoi. Yes, down with the tyrants indeed. And I will update that. Let's see. All right, and hey, we are already at 7 out of the 20 super chats. Because remember, if you give a super chat that is above the teal level, it still counts, right? So, the earlier $9.99 super chat from Roshna still counts. So, that's good.
College campus or something like that. Science's job is to discover what happened, not to prove your theories are true. That's sociology. That's philosophy.
I'm sorry.
I don't think that's true for any of those.
What? Okay, look, first of all, everyone wants their ideas that they came up with to be true, right? Obviously. It's a known bias. No one's going to pretend that that's not the case. But, like, the goal of all of those is to get as close to having true positions as possible in the relevant fields of study, right? And sure, their methods may be different in various places, right? Like, certain of these softer sciences, I think, are diverge so widely from things like physics or biology that putting them in the same category is a little weird. But that doesn't mean they don't have methods, and it doesn't mean they're not rigorous scholarly fields, right? Like, I would say that history is not a science, right? I don't think it uses methods and techniques that are close enough to science to make it count. But that doesn't mean it's nonsense. But yeah, they're all still working on things. Like, history is all about doing things like coming up with interpretations of the past and testing them against textual and also physical evidence to see if they can hold up to scrutiny. Falcon for $5 with their first super chat on the channel. Thank you so much. Says, humans like creating arbitrary categories, therefore evolution false. That does seem to be like a big part of his argument, which is super, super silly. So
That's psychology, and it's not science.
It's
It's your
not
psychology.
what that is.
Well, the only psychology being revealed here is Dr. Jackson's psychology, which is, look, at the risk of being an armchair psychologist, which I'm not qualified to be because no one is, and I'm not even qualified to be a regular psychologist, I gotta say, I think Charles Jackson is showing signs of a pretty severe inferiority complex. Because he really has to make you think that there is just nothing to his intellectual opponents and their so-called evidence. And to a degree that seems kind of suspicious, like maybe he realizes just how inadequate he is when it comes to these topics. But hey, I can't say that for sure, because I am not a psychologist, and I'm definitely not seeing him in a clinical capacity or setting. So what do I know?
Science is the search for the truth, the effort to understand the world.
It is one way that we search for a certain kind of truth. I'll give it that. It is not the only way to find true things, and there are certain things whose truth or falseness cannot really be assessed by science per se. And that's okay. But that's it. That's what science is. Science is a way at getting at knowledge about a certain subset of the things that can be true.
That's what Linus Pauling said, two-time Nobel Prize winner, and unlike Al Gore, he won a Nobel Prize in science.
What the hell does Al Gore have to do with this?
And you, Dapper, I love when it's just a personal hobby of mine to like collect instances of people molding about Al Gore post 2000. Like it's just so funny.
Well, here you go. Here's one of them.
I have a book from the year of our Lord 2017 that is titled oh god, what is it? Inconvenient facts, the science Al Gore doesn't want you to know, something like that.
Oh,
which
wow.
I personally cannot imagine molding about Al Gore for almost 20 years. I can't do it.
I mean, look, I will say I do think that an inconvenient truth set back the cause of like environmentalism and protecting the climate by like at least a decade or so because of the ridiculous things that he said in it that just didn't end up being true. But like, get over it. Current climate models aren't based on Al Gore.
I haven't seen it. I do hate, like, it's like any culture war thing. There's so little point in like arguing online with people about it because they've never read anything about it. I mean, it's like arguing with creationists. Their responses are always like, "Oh, the climate models are wrong." Well, no, usually they're actually fine. There are meta studies on climate models, but we don't have to base what we know today about climate change on models of the future. We have history of the past.
Yeah,
right?
we can just look at
from.
Yeah, we have temperature data. It's fine. We don't need to model to make predictions to know that this is an ongoing trend.
Yeah. You can download it. It's freely downloadable. Berkeley has daily data on the temperature going back to like the 1850s.
Yep.
You don't have to take anyone's word for it. You can just go download it.
And I will say, do I think Al Gore deserves a Nobel Peace Prize? No, not really. Do I think Obama deserved a Nobel Peace Prize? Absolutely not. I mean,
Mr. Drone Strike himself.
Right, exactly. But like, I just can't imagine why anyone would care that much in 2005 about Al Gore. It's just such a silly thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Okay. Al Gore won an Oscar and the Nobel Peace Prize.
Aren't you supposed to be talking about science?
Yeah, that was there, but instead he's just going to complain about how jealous he is of Al Gore, apparently. I didn't win any Oscars.
He's just mad that Charles Jackson's just mad that he didn't invent the internet before Al Gore did.
I still love that in I think it was Civ 4 when you invent the internet in the technology tree. Like the picture that comes up is Al Gore.
That's pretty funny.
It's pretty great.
Oscar is not for science. That's for showmanship, acting. Yes, he was a good actor.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? So why didn't Al Gore get a science Nobel Prize? Well, because nothing that he was saying was actually a discovery that he had made.
Mm-hmm.
Which means he didn't wasn't even in the running for any of this stuff. Right? He wasn't doing science. He was doing science communication. I personally think he was doing it poorly. But also, why are we talking about Al Gore? Gorgonporia says, Dapper Dinosaur, please keep making good streams to watch. Well, I will say, that is my plan. I want to do that for as long as possible. But remember, my ability to do so rests solely on the shoulders of my audience. If you guys drop out and don't support me, I won't be able to do it. But the more you support me, the easier it is for me to make this a thing that I keep on doing. And if it's up to me, I'd get to do this for decades. But it's not entirely up to me. It's up to you guys, too. So, and we'll get...
decades of content. The
Yeah.
Infinidapper.
There you go. Infinidapper. But, you know, that is... We'll talk more about how you can help make sure that I keep on going for decades to come after the break, which is coming up pretty soon.
Well, okay, let's go on with what we want to do. Last night we talked about
Let's
the death
stop
of
molding
Darwinism
about
this
Gore.
year, and I told you
No,
that I was
never.
going to talk about tonight the new Darwinism. What new little thing the evolutionists are going to cook up and dish out of their pot of stew of philosophical apologetics for their failing, doomed theory.
That's a really long-winded way to say, what new thing will the science discover about biology next? And that's all he's saying. Is like, I wonder if science is done learning about biology. And then when the answer is no, he'll just say, ha! And then everyone will be like, what? I don't get it. How dare you learn new things about biology science? See,
You need to stop that right this instant.
yeah, I'm actually going to take a drink for just how dumb this whole idea is. Charles Jackson seems to be deeply offended by the fact that science isn't over. And a lot of creationists are in that same camp, where they're like,
Dapper, you probably know the answer to this. Who was the person who declared that history was over?
oh, I don't remember his name. Although, to be fair, when he said history was over, he didn't mean that events would stop happening.
It just meant cool stuff would stop happening?
What he meant was that often history comes down to the history of armed conflicts between groups of people. And he thought that war in the modern era was so terrible and so devastating that no one would want to fight any more of them, and that therefore the kinds of history we would have to write we had been writing in the past would largely be over.
Okay.
And that
That's
yeah.
fair.
It was closer to historiography as we've known it is over, but that's not pithy.
Okay.
Joshua Geese for $5 says, what on earth is he talking about? Now I want stew. Ooh, I want some stew too. Man, I haven't had stew in a while.
I'll
Reminds
get
me-
Camilla to make us some stew. We'll bring it over to Arizona.
Absolutely. Do it. I'll hold you to that. If I don't have stew in the next month or so that you brought me, I will come find you and demand stew.
Okay. All right. I think I can deal with the consequences of that.
Okay. But yeah, so this is just a common creationist refrain that's almost never actually phrased this way initially. But what it actually comes down to is, I don't like that science hasn't come to firm conclusions about literally everything, and that the conclusions that it has come to, in some cases, are not my preference, and I will complain about that. That's what this is. But that's the thing. Science isn't over. It's still learning things. So yeah, new things are going to come out in biology, in geology, in astronomy, in astrophysics, all over the place. My Unfinished Sock for $5 says, don't cook up a stinking stew of awful apologetics. Like and share the stream with a winky tongue sticking out face emoji. Thank you very much. And that brought us to the halfway point to getting me to have to try to speak David J. Peterson's Sangheili language in a video. Fortunately, that means I get a lot of extra tries because I can re-record if I screw it up. But yeah, wish me luck. Now, because I'm not planning to learn this language, I'm probably going to have only a few very simple sentences. Because first, there isn't that much to learn, so I'm not going to bother. But second, I mean, the Halopedia has a pretty good grammatical sketch of it, and I think like 250, 300 words in their vocabulary list, which means I can throw together a few sentences.
I usually do this presentation in one part, but we're doing it in two parts, so I'm able to elaborate and reiterate a few things tonight that I mentioned yesterday, and also bring...
I have no idea if this recording is both parts or not, but it's 58 minutes long, so like I'm guessing it's only one part. Maybe we can try to find the next part for our, like, the next video we watch. I don't know.
Out some more details about, and please remember that what I'm going to show you a bunch of things that's happening as evolutionists are trying to crank out a new theory. But what happened?
Jackson, have creationists, or sorry, evolutionists, as he calls them, been cranking out new theories that you're aware of? Because I'm not aware of any new theories in biology. Since 2005?
What would they have even been working on at the time?
I mean, hypotheses, yeah.
Is he going to talk about the extended synthesis, maybe?
Almost certainly. I feel like that's coming.
Because that kind of started, as I understand it, or the people who became the extended synthesis proponents kind of started making noises in the 90s, and then it was really solidified by the 2000s. So that might be what he's referring to.
I feel like that's right.
I guess.
If he brings up the extended evolutionary synthesis, guys, we'll have to take a drink for it for a correct prediction.
Yeah. Happens in the future, what happens beyond what I report to you, I will guess about, and I will give you my guesses and what other creationists...
And here, 20 years later, we can figure out whether he was right or wrong. It'll be like testing his hypotheses. That's awesome. I'm actually excited about that.
Are saying about it, and even what evolutionists are saying about it, but no one really knows what they're gonna do next. And
yes, welcome to the human nature where we don't get to see the future. Congrats, Jackson, Bad Jackson. You figured out that humans can't remember the future. Clap. Golf clap, everybody.
What my prognostications come out, I'm not responsible for it. I'm not claiming any gift of being able to know what they're about to do. I do claim a gift from God and being able to give an answer to any man that asks.
Oh my God!
Charles, I hope you saved your gift receipt, because whoo boy, do you need to return that gift, because it is not working.
Reason for the hope that is within me, and so they can't win debates. No way. Okay, let's.
He said, just by the way, he has gone up against Dan Stern Cardinal, and he lost spectacularly.
Yeah, it was. I can't even watch it. It's really embarrassing, and it looks like just about everyone has had a bingo now. So like, congrats to everybody. I'm not surprised. And we're only like 5.5 minutes into his talk. Yeah, we're gonna go a little bit more, and we'll take a quick break.
Last night, Here Lies Old Earth Evolution, March 25th, 2005, rest in peace. That's talking about the soft tissues found in dinosaurs and mastodons.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink for soft tissues were the death knell to old Earth evolution. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but evolution is still going, and the Earth is still old, despite the fact that there were previously unknown preservation mechanisms that could preserve degraded molecular fossils from soft tissue. Okay, Anonymous Pie says we're three. Anonymous Pie says we're 3 squares from blackout. Jeez. Yeah, Mastodon. Well, the idea of Mastodon soft tissue preservation is not exactly novel. He really is talking about dinosaurs, because, like, Mastodon soft tissue preservation.
Mastodons at this point.
Yeah, like that is not an extraordinary in any way.
Yeah.
The Moa, the Maya.
The Moa? You mean the birds that went extinct? You mean the birds that went extinct like 400 years ago? I'm taking another drink for how can we have Moa preserve soft tissue? Which actually reminds me, I saw a creationist once saying, like, how could dinosaurs be millions of years old? Look at this dinosaur foot. And it sure was a dinosaur foot, full of soft tissue. I mean, it was basically a mummified dinosaur foot. Except it was a Moa foot. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, how is it possible?
How will we recover?
Yeah, I mean, at least he was acknowledging that that bird was a dinosaur, although I don't think he thought it was a Moa. I think he thought it was like a velociraptor foot.
I mean, it says something, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. There is going to be a teaser for the next upcoming episode of Star Trek Adventures with Star Trek Lexington over on my Top Hats Off channel. Please feel free to check that out. It's a really good time. We play on Fridays. I'll say more about it before we end this. But and as Kiwi Runa says, yay the Moa. Yeah, Moas are super cool. It's really disappointing that they went extinct only a few centuries ago.
Bring back the great Auk. Make the Auk great again.
Sure. All right. So here's our quick little intermission, and we will be back in a few minutes. Next time on Star Trek Lexington.
Captain's Log, Stardate 6419.0. After a month-long survey of the Alpha Doradus sector, Admiral Banna Stoker has ordered us to investigate the ruins of Pegasi 5. The readings from the planet are similar to those from Bacchus 4, and Lieutenant Lanford believes that they may have been produced by the same ancient civilization. If this is true, then the extent of that civilization, which Admiral Stoker calls the Tilikal, must have been enormous, as we are more than 1,000 light-years from Bacchus 4. The Admiral has requested planet-side investigation and detailed logs. This will require multiple landing parties, and I've had Commander Shelby and Lieutenant Lanford coordinate with Lieutenant Croc to assemble a few such parties. I myself will be leading another team, comprised mostly of senior staff, which will coordinate as well as investigate. Hopefully, no more star systems blow up.
The ruins on Pegasi 5 are ancient, but not inactive. During the course of the investigation, one of the landing parties is accidentally transported farther than should even be possible. They find themselves on an asteroid colony, hundreds of thousands of light years away, with no obvious way to escape. Further, the station is not abandoned, and instead is inhabited by opposing groups of religious fanatics. The crew will have to keep the peace between these groups, all while avoiding the dangers of an ancient colony with malfunctioning equipment in the hope that they might find a way back home. In We Came Forth to Contemplate the Stars, only on Top Hats Off. Okay, and we are back. So first, I want to take a quick Dapper as a Professional drink, because I did have both videos playing simultaneously for a second there. So there's that. Let's see. Vadim Marchenko says, Pegasi 5, is this My Little Pony? It is not. And yeah, there's a real constellation called Pegasus. So, and things from that are in Pegasi. All right, so real quick before we get back into this, I want to say first thank you to everyone who's here, everyone who is a member of the channel, who is a member of the Patreon, who's super chatting, who's gifting memberships. We haven't had any gifted memberships yet, but we frequently do. I really appreciate all of that. It is how the channel keeps going. Like I said, I would love to do this for decades. I don't see a reason for me to stop doing this as long as you guys keep supporting me. So, that means if you are enjoying this channel and you want to make sure it keeps going as long as possible, there are some great ways to do that. The easiest ways are the Patreon and the channel memberships. The Patreon is where I get to keep the most, so it's my preferred method. But both of them give you access to my Discord server that is just for supporters. They both give you early access to my scripted videos, which is often like up to 6, even sometimes 7 months of like in the future. There's dozens of videos that you can check out, like right now, that are in early access. So there's that. They both at higher tiers can give you better perks. You know, like you'll get your name in the credits. I'll say your name out loud at certain perks. You can request videos, all sorts of stuff. And on the Patreon, it starts at $1 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you go annually. It starts at $1.99 here on YouTube. There are no discounts for going annual, but it does also get you access to the cool channel emojis, and it turns your name green, which is fun. And then if, you know, a monthly or annual pledge isn't your thing, that's absolutely fine. I have other ways, just super chatting, super thanks, gifting memberships. Those are all really great ways to help out the channel. And also, I have a merch store linked in the description, as well as an Amazon wish list linked in the description. And Jackson, I think you have an Amazon wish list that's on your channel, right?
I don't think I posted it on my channel. I posted it on Twitter one time. I should post it on...
Well, Jackson's going to go add that to his channel, so go click through to his channel later if you want to see what he wants from his Amazon wish list. So, also a wish list and Patreon for Bent Hoven, my co-host for Kent with Bent, is also on there. You know, Bent is a disabled veteran who is, you know, it's a tough gig being a disabled veteran who had the VA basically ruin your career. And by basically, I mean absolutely devastatingly ruin your career. Only a few years into it. So, you know, if you want to throw him a bone or two, that would also be appreciated. So, let's see. And Jillian, some guy on a boat at Alren, says, I am right now under my snugly warm Dapper Dinosaur blanket. Yeah, the Dapper Dinosaur fleece blanket, it's a little pricey, but it's actually really, really nice. So, I mean, give that a go.
Nice.
But with that, I think we are ready to head in there. And just, yeah, thank you so much, everybody. All right, so let's get some more Charles Jackson now that I have a freshly topped off whiskey cola.
And the Triceratops, the T-Rex, the Santanoraptor, all those different kinds of things. And that of course, is a problem for evolution. It's
not a problem.
Is he just naming? I'm not aware of Santanoraptor soft tissue.
I'm not either, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if it does or not, because I've said this probably more times than I ever really thought I would need to. But let's take a look at what the options were here when soft tissue was discovered in a T-Rex fever. Okay. We have, on the one hand, we are wrong about everything we thought we knew about biology, geology, physics, chemistry, basically every single branch of science. It's all wrong. Everything. That's one option. Or the other option is there's a heretofore unknown chemical process that can preserve biomolecules in a degraded state for millions of years. Just Occam's razor style, which one of those seems more likely?
Probably that there's just some preservation mechanisms that we didn't yet know about.
Yeah. That's the apparently not a linguist merch would be great. All right. Guys, start yelling at me about merch you want, because I, for some reason, just always forget to make merch that is new merch. So just start yelling at me about it. Like, give me like daily reminders until I do it.
They're still reeling from the effects of that discovery too.
Are we?
No one was ever reeling. There were some people who were confused and some people who were like, I don't buy it, but no one was reeling.
2 years ago with no acceptable answers. But
so that was a few years ago. So this is probably more like 2008 or something like that, which makes his complaints about Al Gore even that much more ridiculous.
But there's much, much more that is causing them consternation.
Ooh.
Much more that's giving them terrible problems.
Here's what he really means. There are open questions in the field of biology. Which, yeah, there are, because biology is still a field under active research. It wouldn't be if there were no questions, but that's what he's saying. There are unknowns in biology. Okay.
And causing them to have to find a new paradigm. We'll talk about what that's basically a...
Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $5 says, how long before they say, I have soft tissue in my freezer? Checkmate, evolutionists.
It
Probably
could even be dinosaur soft tissue in their freezer.
It could. It could. I often have dinosaur soft tissue in my freezer. Not right now, I don't think. Which, by the way, hey, we're only 9 super chats away from forcing me to try to struggle through saying Haley in my next video, which will be great.
Lens through which you see everything. It's basically, in the scientific world, it's the equivalent of the term worldview.
No. It's just basically a fancy term for a collection of theories that are all interlocking in a particular field. That's closer to what's true.
Which Ron went over a great deal yesterday, and so did Dr. Sharp.
Did he? Did Ron do that?
Maybe, I don't know.
Next. This is Marcus Ross, a professor at Liberty University.
Liberty University is basically a Christian nationalist right-wing propaganda outlet that trains people to be Christian nationalist propagandists. Calling it a university I find offensive, but apparently it has managed to get itself credentialed by at least one reasonably well-recognized credentialing body. So, I mean, I guess good for them, but if I were a, say, HR or hiring manager type person, and I saw someone with a Liberty University on their resume, it would be an easy pass for me. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's not a university. It's just a training center for propagandists.
Made the New York Times this year for getting his doctoral degree from University of Rhode Island.
That's weird.
An actual university?
Okay. Well, yeah. Heather talks to randos on Transcoon, who's been a member for 15 months, and is at the amniote level, says, is Bad Jackson abusing the word paradigm again? Yeah, basically.
And he's a creationist.
Okay.
I've known Marcus by email for over 10 years when he was the Penn State Origins Club president as an undergrad.
The Origins Club? What a weird kind of club to have. I can't imagine joining the Origins Club. It's just, ugh.
He used to get my emails, and actually I used to send my emails under a pseudonym so that I wouldn't get fired from the college where I was teaching, and he would send them all out and distribute them from Penn State so that those email return address didn't come back to me where I was teaching at the time. I ended up being denied tenure anyway, but that's another story.
Oh man.
Like,
here's the thing.
You didn't meet any of the criteria necessary to get tenure, so...
Yeah. Plus, here's the thing about, like, tenure and being allowed to teach at real universities as a creationist, right? There's a reason that we don't let flat earthers teach, like, geology or astronomy or geography or anything like that, right? Because they won't do it right. There are almost every single scientific field, almost every STEM field except maybe math. A young earth creationist will either have to knowingly say things that they don't believe are true, or will be incapable of teaching. That's not someone you want as a professor. And that's not because it's some kind of crazy bias. It's just because you're wrong. You're verifiably wrong. You're demonstrably wrong. You're not even trying, for the most part, to get your ideas taken seriously. And no one should be subject to that kind of nonsense while trying to get a real education. So, while it's largely not true that creationists are just denied jobs in academia on the grounds that they're creationists, I think it should be more true than it is. I think that we should at the very least say that creationist schools aren't allowed to give STEM degrees except for math and maybe engineering. Like, they should absolutely not be able to give science degrees. and that any science degree from a creationist school is like a degree in geography from Flat Earth University. It's completely meaningless. In fact, it probably means it probably means that you're worse than the average random guy on the street at science because you got a science degree from a group of profoundly anti-scientific pseudoscientists. Roshan Math has made up numbers. Keller for $4.99 says, "I knew this guy via email. That takes me a degree closer to Kevin Bacon." I actually was trying to think, like, how many degrees am I from Kevin Bacon? And the answer is not that many. Not that many. Mostly because Vishanti knows some people in the industry, and that makes it a very close connection right there. So, yeah. Like, because of her, I'm like 3 degrees from a number of Star Trek actors.
But Marcus then went to Dakota School of Mines and got his master's. Now he's a Dr. Ross. And when
he sure is.
Got his doctoral degree from University of Rhode Island, the New York Times picked up that, and it was a big old fiasco because
I feel like it was just a slow news day for New York. I can't imagine any other reason why this would be reported on. Because the thing is, creationists get degrees all the time. It's really not that big a deal. Yeah. I mean, they're by far the minority in any given degree program that is, worth a damn. But, like, there are plenty of PhDs that are creationists, including lots of PhDs in subjects where it doesn't really matter, right? Like, if you get your PhD in, like, French literature, does it really matter how old you think the Earth is? No. Regios for $5 says, "Do creationists print their degrees on toilet paper? That way it'd be worth something." No, unfortunately they don't. And to be fair, a lot of them really do have real degrees, right? Like Marcus Ross's degree is a real degree. He really did do the work to become Dr. Ross in a real school, in a real degree program. Same thing with Charles Jackson here. He did the work to get a doctorate in education. He is properly Dr. Jackson. I'm not going to deny him that. He did the work. He met the qualifications. He went through all of the processes, including fighting off the snake. And, yeah. You know what? He didn't fight off that snake any less than anyone else did.
Mm-hmm.
In case you didn't know, that's the last step to getting your doctorate, is you have to fight a snake. And how dangerous and venomous the snake is depends on how much your board liked you.
Creationist got a doctoral degree. Well, so did I. Lots of us have doctoral degrees.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, Charles? I agree with you. This is a weird thing for the New York Times to be obsessed with. It's not that unusual. So take a drink for that.
But next, this woman here, Eugenie Scott, it's such a shame. She looks like a nice person, but...
She probably is a nice person. Literally the only reason I think that Charles Jackson doesn't think she's a nice person is because Eugenie Scott cares about science, and he does whatever the opposite of caring about science is. He actively works to tinder science. Vimurchenko says, "Do young Earth creationists have to fight a snake that has legs like in Genesis?" Yes. That is the rule. Fearmonger says, "Is that why Finland lets new PhDs keep the swords they used to kill the snake?" Yes. Yep, you guys are figuring it all out.
Dr. Scott is the executive director of the National Center for Science Education, Incorporated, a private, basically hate creation group in their...
No, it's a pro-science group, and if creationists weren't trying to hinder science education, they wouldn't care about you, and they would focus more on anti-vaxxers or electric universe or, I don't know, homeopaths or something like that. There are plenty of other people doing prominent science denial. But being a US-based organization, and by far the most prominent group of anti-science people trying to make their way into public schools in the United States is young Earth creationists, that's where they focus most of their attention. If you didn't do that, then they probably wouldn't care so much. Mensa's Guide to Fart Smelling 2 Smell Harder for $5, which is quite the name, says, "Oh wow, I'm so late today. What are the inside jokes? AIG are a bag of gooey duck? Yep. Bad Jackson is super pretentious? Yep. And I miss Circle Face. Yeah, I miss Circle Face too. Circle Face was cool. We'll take a drink for the AIG.
You know, you don't have to miss him too hard. He'll always be around.
I mean, that's true, but like, I don't know. He had a nice calming voice. He had that NPR thing going on, and I kind of like that. You know, that whole thing, like, and yesterday in Aleppo, 300,000 small baby children were killed in a bomb attack. And you're like,
I made a
oh, okay.
similar joke to Camilla yesterday.
Yeah, that seems fine, because someone with an NPR voice told me about it.
Why is our go-to with NPR voice always like terrible tragedy?
Because that's when it's the most incongruous. That's the whole reason. That's part of comedy there. Are you making me explain the joke, Jackson?
I'm just thinking about it.
Roshan of Math is made up numbers. Keller for $4.99 says, how many flirts / yeks do you think have raging oppositional defiant disorder? Okay, so again, I am not anything close to qualified to actually answer this question. However, I gotta think it's overrepresented among them compared to the general population, or at least among like the prominent and outspoken yeks and flurfs. Because you gotta remember, we only see the tip of the yek and flurf iceberg, right? There's a whole bunch of people who don't go online, who don't give speeches, who don't go to conferences as speakers, who are flurfs or yeks, right? And most of those people are probably just regular Joes who just happen to have biases that have turned them into creationists or flurfs, or they were raised that way in the case of creationists. I don't think it's too common to be raised as a flurf, although I do fear that will be less the case in like 10 years, right? Because then that'll have been about 20 years or so of like flurfs being, or I guess closer to 15 or so years of flurfs being prominent. That's enough time to raise a kid as a flurf. So get ready for second generation flurfs coming up here in a few years. That'll be fun.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. My pappy was a flurf and I'm a flurf. I can't feel no spinning. I don't know why this person's like from the South in Appalachia. I'm sorry. That's an unfair characterization. And I actually don't generally think of people with that accent as being dumb. But Hollywood has ruined that for me. So it's now just the dumb accent.
Dapper, if it's any consolation, I do like dumb people in a Southern accent.
Okay.
I do it.
And you a Southerner.
I am in the South.
Yeah.
Right, I am a Southerner.
That's fair. And the thing is, like, I really should know better because, like, the reason I dropped my Boston accent was specifically because it generally comes across as unintelligent, which isn't fair, but it's still true. So, look, you know what? Compared to all the horrible stuff that's going on, I feel like maybe me doing a slightly offensive Southern accent is not the worst thing. So we're gonna hit play.
Credo and their statement of purpose there to keep evolution going and keep creation out of the public schools.
I'm sorry, what is
Dr.
the
Scott.
statement of faith for AIG?
That is a good question. Let's find out. I'm just going to Google statement of faith. Answers Genesis. First thing that came up, even on shitty Google, because they literally pay Google. It is a sponsored result. Okay, so statement of faith. Answers in Genesis. In order to preserve the function and integrity of Answers in Genesis ministry and its various attractions and outreaches, both domestic and international, in its mission to proclaim the absolute truth and authority of Scripture and to provide a biblical role model to our employees and to the global body of Christ. Gee, that is a big-headed version of what they think they're doing. It is imperative that all persons employed by the AAG ministry in any capacity or who serve as volunteers should abide by and agree to our statement of faith and conduct themselves accordingly. The triune God. There is one God, self-existent and eternal, infinitely perfect, the creator, sustainer, and ruler of all things. Bunch of Bible verses. The Godhead is triune, one God, three persons, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Each person is fully God, their glory equal, and their majesty co-eternal. Several Bible verses. For his own glory and by his own decree, the triune God created heaven, and the earth, time and all things visible and invisible, living and non-living, material and non-material. Bunch of Bible verses. Our Lord Jesus Christ, the uncreated God, creator and the only begotten Son of God, took on human flesh to be fully man without ever ceasing to be fully God. Bunch of Bible verses. Jesus Christ was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, and lived a sinless life. Bunch of Bible verses. So far, this could just be like the Nicene Creed.
Down to the very last one of origins in history. What is the last bullet point?
Man, sin, salvation, church, Christ.
No, origins and history.
Origins and history, got it, right. No apparent perceived or claimed evidence in any field of study, including science, history, and chronology, can be valid if it contradicts with the clear teaching of Scripture, obtained by historical grammatical interpretation. Of primary importance is the fact that evidence is always subject to interpretation by fallible people who do not possess all information. So yeah, it's literally, we will reject all evidence that does not comport with our dogmatic, and I will add, non-biblical view of the history of the world, because there is no biblical view of the history of the world, because the Bible is internally contradictory about the history of the world. Okay, we got another super chat. Lady novelist Kent's Tender Touch, A Chicken's Tale, which is still disturbing, for $4.99 says, Flurf/EX are raging something. Correct. And let's see, that puts us only 4 super chats away from me having to figure out another David J. Peterson language. Which I say that like I don't like his languages. His language is actually fine. He does good work with those languages. Fate Degrade Justice for Elhanan, who's been a member for 30 months, says, Dapper swimsuit calendar when? That would be me putting on extra clothes. What are you talking about? I'm normally just wearing a top hat, a monocle, and a tie. Why would I put on swimwear for a calendar? I should actually just take the top hat and the tie off. That would be really, really, racy right there. Hide that from your parents. The dapper tie, no hat calendar. Whew.
Commented and said she would never accept a creationist into a doctoral degree program because it would just take too much time to re-educate them.
I mean, it would take that time, but I disagree with her. I don't think that creationists should be barred from doctoral programs. I'll just put that out there. Jackson, I assume you agree with me on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am against barring creationists from degree programs.
Yes. Yeah, that would be silly.
Yeah. For one thing, I know of creationists who only stopped being creationists because of their degree programs. Mary Schweitzer being a prominent example of those. Mary Schweitzer was a young Earth creationist until she started working on her paleontology doctorate degree. And then she was like, oh, none of this works, does it? Okay, I guess I'm not that anymore. And yet she remained a Christian. So, yeah.
To unbrainwash them and stuff like that. And another professor in Texas said, creationists shouldn't be able to become scientists.
I actually disagree with that. Yeah, I disagree with that too, right? There are plenty of parts of science where you can make a contribution while being a creationist, right? It's not all of them, and your biases will have a chance of coming out in any field of science. But, like, there are good creationists who are scientists, right? There are creationists who've worked for NASA, who've designed telescopes, who've helped, do science with rovers and analyze samples from, like, Mars and asteroids and stuff. There are creationists who've done good work in things like hydrology and stuff like that. Like, there are creationists who do good science. There are even creationists who do good geology, right? Andrew Snelling has a number of perfectly decent papers to his name. Now, granted, they aren't young Earth creationist papers, but they're still papers. He still contributed to real geology. I don't think we should, negate that fact because he's a creationist, right? So, yeah, no. The idea that creationists can't do science and shouldn't be allowed to do science is not something I agree with. Roshina, Math is Made Up Numbers, Keller for $4.99 says, Dapper Dinosaur is in a tastefully tasteless bikini. Goodness. That reminds me, Chesh and I spent a while a few nights ago trying to figure out how one of her swimsuits was supposed to work, because it is not very obvious. She showed me this picture of it, and she's like, I don't know how to put this on. I was like, you think I do? But yeah, I don't know. How would a dinosaur wear a bikini? Like, is there an extra hole for the tail?
You need one of those. You need one of those images. Like, would a dinosaur wear a bikini like this or like this?
Exactly. Yeah, I think I do need one of those. Yeah. Mensa's Guide to Fart Smelling 2 Smell Harder for $5 says, Dapper in just a monocle calendar when? Actually, I don't even know, where do you go to get a calendar made? Because I'd be okay with making a Dapper Dinosaur calendar. Probably for 2026. I feel like, if you don't have a 2025 calendar by now, you probably just don't want one. But like, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like, so let me know where like you can get that kind of stuff done. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith, who's been a member for 23 months, says, "What about flurfs?" It's a lot harder to be a scientist as a flurf, but I still think that you could do it. The problem is that to be a flurf, you have to be so bad at like basic geometry and math and so many things in order to maintain a belief in the flat Earth that I don't know what sciences you could possibly do. But that doesn't mean you can't do good work in a professional setting, right? Like, you could probably be a perfectly good like HR representative and be a flurf, or like a perfectly good computer programmer and be a flurf. Maybe, well, no, maybe not, because that requires a lot of logical skills. I mean, you could probably be a pretty good salesperson. In fact, I know a lot of flurfs happen to be good salespeople because that's how they make a living, is by selling people flat Earth. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely jobs. I don't know how many of them would be STEM jobs that you could get while being at least what I know of from flurfs. Keller Tellian, who has been a member for 29 months and is at the amniote level, says, "Badge action is just participating in the ancient tradition of the airing of grievances for Festivus." You know what? That might be, and also there's an AIG as a bag of dicks emoji, so we will take a drink for that. That might be. Maybe we should have a Festivus special on the channel. I don't know. We'll see. You guys can air all your grievances about me. Roshina, math has made up numbers. Keller for $4.99 says, "A dinosaur would wear a bikini with gusto." Probably true. Probably true. All right, and we are only one super chat away from the goal, so let's see if we can get there. Hillhugger, who's been a member for 27 months, says, "Lying liars who lie can once have done science." Yeah, lying liars who lie can once have done science. I mean, it's true. You can be a lying liar who lies and still do science. And then Regios for $5 says, "Swimsuit couldn't be any harder to put on than your human suit." On second thought, maybe it is. Which does, in fact, meet our goal. So that way, I'm going to have to go and add some saying Haley dialogue, which will be... Wish me luck, because I'm going to have to dig through the grammatical sketch on Halopedia to figure out how to do this. What I know about it right now is that it is SOV for like most sentences. I don't think uses an explicit copula in the present tense. It has an ergative ergative absolutive alignment, which I think is just pure ergative absolutive. And stative versus active verbs take different semantic meanings for the same different stuff. I can't talk. For different like morphemes that will be attached to the verb for like conjugation purposes. And that's about all I know. So I think I remember the first person singular pronoun too. I think it's John. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to work on that. That'll be interesting. All right. And yeah, I'm not a linguist. What, just because I know a few things about some conlang that I looked into because people said they would be willing to pay me to speak? That doesn't make me a linguist. What do you guys think a linguist is? It seems not
the closest that a lot of us have ever been to a linguist ever.
I mean, that might be, but that's kind of like saying, like, you know, your like uncle who washed out of like the college football team in his senior year because of an ankle injury is the closest you've been to an NFL player. That might be true, but he's not an NFL player.
I think that might be one of the most ludicrously humble brags I've like ever heard in terms like to defend yourself from like, oh, I'm gonna compare myself who has immense knowledge of the variety of languages and the evolution of different languages to a guy who twisted his ankle. Like that's so ridiculous. Such a ridiculous thing.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't have a better comparison.
Okay. All right.
Rhonda says Dapper is more of a linguist than Bad Jackson is a science teacher. That, I think, is probably true, because I am not intentionally misinforming people about linguistics. I could. I'm like, hey, have you guys heard about Altaic? Well, let me tell you, then I would be much closer to Charles Jackson, which I just now realize no one knows what Altaic is or was. It's a long debunked linguistics theory that tried to unite a bunch of languages in like East Asia that were not actually connected.
So what I'm hearing is we need to bring it back.
No, we don't. It's been disconfirmed. It's just not a thing. DM says all you have to do is publish Dapper. True, but also easier said than done. I don't have a damn thing to publish about in linguistics.
Which made a professor in Kansas, who was one of the crafters of the pro-evolution Kansas State Board of Education standards, made him...
So, in other words, the state of Kansas science standards.
Yeah.
Because anything that's a science standard will be pro-evolution, or it'll actually be an anti-science standard.
him say, that's frightening to think that, even though I'm not a creationist, that's frightening that someone would say something like that. Science is for everyone.
No, I actually agree with that guy. And like we said, I disagree that creationists shouldn't be allowed to do science or shouldn't be allowed to get degrees. I do think creationist schools should not be allowed to give science degrees, but that's a separate question.
And ought to be. Well, Dr. Scott was very, very, upset about the fact that Marcus got his...
And Regios just gets 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. That really does mean a lot. We'll take 10 drinks for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right.
doctoral degree. Next, but there's more things like this that continue to go on. Look what this guy here says. This is the open-minded university professor mindset we usually...
Vulpix, half fox, half Pokemon, who's been a member for 17 months, is at the amniote level, says, Dapper, not a linguist, just a polyglot with a Mothra. That's the thing, I don't think of myself as a polyglot either. For one thing, I'm not pretending to speak languages I can't, which is what a lot of YouTube polyglots do. So, there is that. For another thing, I read French reasonably well. My understanding has gone down considerably. I can read and understand Spanish reasonably well. My ability to produce sentences in Spanish is not amazing, though. It's just okay. My Klingon it's pretty decent. I'm probably in the 80th percentile or something for people who have ever studied Klingon. But that doesn't say a lot because there aren't a lot of us, and very few people are anything close to being fluent. I know very little Japanese, a tiny little smattering of just basic phrases and a few nouns in Korean. Let's see. I can read Latin okay-ish with the grammar handy for a lot of the verb forms because I don't remember most of them. My Old English is pretty rusty, but for a while it was okay. I don't know. Does that make me a polyglot, Jackson?
I don't know what the standards are, so...
Well, that's part of it. There's no official standard.
Then in that case, yes.
Okay, well then maybe I am a polyglot. I don't know. I would not identify myself as a polyglot, but I'm not in charge. But Regios has just gifted another 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, and we will take 10 drinks for that. 1, 2, 3. Laserfan says, not a polyglot, a polykeet. I'm definitely not a polykeet. Jackson, I think you can confirm this.
Wrong theropod.
Well, that's not even... Polykeets aren't even theropods. 4.
I'm sorry, did you say parakeet or polykeet?
Polykeet. Like the worms.
Okay. Oh, you're sure right. Polykeets. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you said parakeet. I don't know why I said that.
No, yeah, polykeet.
You are not covered in bristles that help you move around through the sediment, as far as I'm aware.
True, I'm not. 5. Vadim Radchenko says, how many languages can you operate in? I mean, it depends on what level I have to operate, but if I only have to operate in a very basic level, probably 4. If I have to operate on a day-to-day, this is my everyday spoken language that I have to do everything in, it's really just 1. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And yeah, I'm also not a parakeet. Yes, as DM Denver Canada Wing says, hashtag not a parakeet. It's true. Oh, and then Olivia Williams for $6.99 Beaver Bucks said, "C'est le temps de prendre une gorgée with a good aura." Thank you very much. We'll take a drink for that. And I will add that number so that we can see how close we are to getting bent a free pizza, which is to say, we're probably not going to do it, but that's okay, because Joshua Geese got bent a whole bunch of things like refried beans, which we actually already turned into burritos. We had some rice and refried bean burritos with some melted cheese, and I added some butter and paprika and cumin and chili powder and cayenne pepper and whatnot to the rice. It was pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
really good stuff. And I got those really big burrito tortillas, and they're handmade tortillas, and I made sure to heat them up. That's the way to go with tortillas. Those handmade tortillas.
Here espouse, look, our society should be an open society, willing to accept and embrace diversity. I'd like to see more tolerance and open-mindedness in our country. Next. So you accept that I'm a born-again, Bible-believing, literal six-day creationist?
And the real answer is yes, of course I accept that you're that. You say you are. Why would you lie about that?
Next. Get out and stay out!
Which isn't a real thing that happens.
Yeah,
It's just
this is
not.
a story that didn't happen.
Yeah, we'll take a drink for stories that didn't happen, even though it's Dan Latham's story that didn't happen, not Charles Jackson's story that didn't happen. And then Joshua Geese has gifted 5 more Dapper Dinosaur memberships. I'm going to have to get another drink soon. Sorry?
Obviously, like, the point of this cartoon is, like, people are talking about having more, compassion and accepting diversity within society, especially for, like, downtrodden minorities, of which young Earth creationists are not. So
Yeah, the idea that young Earth creationists are a downtrodden minority while having the Speaker of the House be someone with an
Right.
author's page on Answers in Genesis, and while also having basically been the driving force behind electing a known serial rapist and fraudster, adjudicated insurrectionist, and 32 times over felon.
Mhm.
Yeah, you guys aren't the downtrodden minority.
Yep.
Sorry. I'm actually not sorry. It must be nice.
There's the hypocrisy. You see, all
Oh my god, Charles Jackson figured out the dilemma of tolerance. Oh wow. It turns out that if you want to have a tolerant society, you can't tolerate intolerance. Who could have ever seen this coming? Except literally everyone, dude. It's not news.
I like the way you said that. It makes me. I would love for someone to write like a series of children's books that's like Charles Jackson discovers the ship of Theseus paradox.
Just kids' books about like the most
Right.
basic bitch aspects of philosophy and poli-sci that Charles Jackson just happened to discover today. Yeah. All right, here we go.
all things considered except one. You see, that's the way it goes. Next. This man, Richard von Sternberg, has 2 doctoral
that
degrees.
dude.
Isn't he one of
Isn't
the
that the dude?
evolutionary extended
He's a-
synthesis guys?
I think he's at the DI actually.
Really?
I think
Okay.
he might be in the extended synthesis. I think I'm pretty sure you're right that he has a degree in evolutionary biology. I believe this is the guy who was like the editor for a journal who let Stephen Meyer publish some crap in that journal.
Oh, yeah.
Then
And
they
then
said, like, we're not renewing your like job or whatever.
yeah, well, also, didn't they get like a huge number of letters to the editor, like just eviscerating the Meyer paper?
I believe so. Yeah, it was like there was a huge uproar because he was like.
I mean, it was a
trying to
terrible
smuggle in
paper.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
In evolution-related subject areas. He was doing research at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., working as an employee of the National Institutes of Health.
Oh, and he let Meyer bypass peer review, if I remember.
Yes.
That was the real big
that's-
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he let Meyer just publish and didn't actually bother to submit it to peer review. Because, spoiler alert, Meyer's paper wouldn't have survived peer review. Because it didn't survive peer review, because it was immediately eviscerated in the journal.
In Maryland. And he was also, a couple of years ago, editor of a small geology journal that came out of the Smithsonian.
This is the
but
one.
he did an unforgivable in the sight of the evolutionist community. He allowed a creationist, well, actually an intelligent design theorist, Stephen
Those aren't different things.
Meyer, to publish.
Yeah, those are functionally the same thing.
Yeah, they're so the same thing that, remember, when the Discovery Institute was trying to defend the use of a creationist textbook in court, they presented as their non-creationist textbook a textbook which had the typo "See Design Proponentists" because all they had done to change it from being creationist to intelligent design was change the word creationism to intelligent design theory or intelligent design, and the word creationists or creationists to intelligent design proponents or intelligent design proponents. And in one place they'd screwed up and left the hybrid term "See Design Proponentists." So whenever anyone says to you that this, intelligent design isn't creationism, they're either lying to you or they've bought into the lies told by the Discovery Institute. They absolutely are creationists. They used to admit it until they realized that was untenable as a legal strategy. So they are in fact creationists. In fact, Stephen Meyer is open that he is a Christian creationist and he thinks the intelligent designer is the God of the Bible. Now, setting aside the fact that there's no such thing as the God of the Bible, there's multiple ideas about God in the Bible. Whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Some of the I didn't mean to cut you off. Some of the creation or some of the design proponents, whatever, who work at the Discovery Institute are themselves young Earth creationists.
Yep.
Some of them just are. I can't remember what that dude's name is offhand, but I think Ann Gager is a young Earth creationist. There are several of them who are just straight up young Earth creationists. So like, the difference between them is not a lot.
No,
There's
it's not.
really almost no difference. And I mean, and the people who are not explicit young Earth creationists, really don't like to have arguments about how old the Earth is.
Yeah, they hate that.
Only one of them, the only counterexample to that I've ever seen, was Stephen Meyer said that he used to get into arguments with Duane Gish 30 years ago about how old the Earth is. Like,
I mean,
okay.
yeah, Stephen Meyer seems to be an old Earth creationist. I'll give him that. He's not wrong
Yeah.
about the age of the Earth.
But that's it. I don't know. I think what is it? Behe's book, Darwin's Black Box, acknowledges that the Earth is old, which again, 30 years ago.
And
So,
also
like-
acknowledges that Behe's okay with a fair amount of common ancestry.
Right. I mean, they both are. I mean, like, because Meyer accepts like phylum level common ancestry. So
Except for humans, though.
yes, humans are special. We gotta be separate. We gotta be away from everybody else. We can't be with the common air breathing or mouth breathing, mammals and reptiles and whatnot. So
Not acceptable. All right, here we go.
Paper in that journal. It was peer reviewed.
No, it wasn't. That was
No,
the
it
key.
wasn't.
That's the thing. That's a lie, Charles Jackson. I have trouble believing you don't know that. Because the thing is, plenty of journals have published papers by young Earth creationists, right? Lots of them have. But the thing is that when young Earth creationists manage to publish in real journals, it generally is not about young Earth creationism, but it's still by young Earth creationists. And in fact, often it's by open and known young Earth creationists. But the papers are peer-reviewed with blinding, right? So you do not get to know who the author is that you're peer-reviewing. Which is why sometimes you get amusing peer-review notes like, you did not take into account enough of the work of this author, when that author is in
Right.
fact the author of the paper. Which is,
Right.
amusing when that happens, and it does happen. But that's why they can get their papers published when they do good work. No one cares. But what actually happened was that no one peer-reviewed this. Richard von Sternberg did a favor for a friend and let him publish unpeer-reviewed in his journal. That's unacceptable, no matter who Stephen Meyer is or what he believes. That's completely unacceptable. It would even be unacceptable if the paper would have passed peer review. It still needs to go through the process. Anytime you let someone publish a paper in your journal without going through the same peer review process as anyone else, you are showing an inappropriate level of favoritism. Now, did it make it worse that Stephen Meyer is a creationist who wrote an obviously terrible paper? No, that made it worse. I will agree. It was certainly made it worse. It probably would have been a smaller scandal had that not been the case. But the fact is, it would have been a scandal no matter what. Because you let a guy skip peer review. That's not okay, ever. It's never okay. It's fine for a letter to the editor, right? That you want to publish as like a quick little one-page thing. But that's not the same thing as a paper, right? If you want to publish a paper, it needs to go through peer review. And if the editor lets it not... Yeah, or an opinion piece. But if the editor lets it not go through peer review, that's a problem. That's why Answer's research journal isn't a real journal, because they don't do real peer review. Because if they did, I can tell you one thing, Gabriella Haynes' papers wouldn't have been published.
By three, experts in the field.
By none.
No.
They did find problems, but Dr. Sternberg...
No, they didn't, because they didn't exist.
...said, I think that even though there were some problems in the paper, we ought to bring up this discussion in the literature because it's being...
That's not how peer review even works anyway. If there were problems, you would give the paper back with revision suggestions, and then they could resubmit after making the revisions. So even if Charles Jackson's account of this were true, it would still be a problem because it would be letting someone bypass what peer review you did give them. Because if the peer reviewer saying no... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You finish.
Oh, if the peer reviewer say no, this needs changes or revisions or something like that, but you, as the editor, publish anyway, you are violating the whole point of peer review. And what were you going to say?
I think what Charles is saying is what I think he's telling a version of the story. I don't think he's intentionally lying. I think what he's thinking is the people who wrote the scathing letters to the editor were the peer review, which means he doesn't understand how peer review works. Because you have to be peer reviewed before you get published, not after. Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, you can get peer reviewed after, obviously, but
Yeah,
the
you get
first
additional
round
review.
of peer review.
Right.
The first round of peer review is before you get published. So I think he might be maybe misremembering or misunderstanding how peer review works. One of the two. But I think that's what he's saying.
I have trouble not concluding that this is dishonesty on his part. I
I mean,
can't
that's
prove
also
it.
possible.
Fearmonger says, this is probably the most blatant example of straight up lying instead of just being misinformed. Not just getting details wrong, but making up a story where none existed. Yeah, it's... Look, y'all know me. I try to be charitable. And I try not to assume dishonesty. But it gets really hard, especially in cases like this. And at this point, I have trouble coming to a conclusion that isn't this that Charles Jackson is lying.
Being discussed in circles in the scientific community anyway. Well, you'd have thought that he allowed some kind of, endorsement of Nazi concentration camps or something. Because
Hey, Chuck. I'm just going to point out here, some 20 years later, that the side that is currently talking about putting people in camps on the basis of their ethnic origin, and then doing things like trying to deport them wholesale from the country, including stripping their citizenship, is the side you're on.
Yeah.
That's you. The person who's
guy?
the groups who are currently talking
Mike
about...
Johnson?
Well, Mike Johnson, but also like the Republican Party overall, has started floating the idea of revoking birthright citizenship, which is a constitutional right, by the way. That's just in the Constitution. And also stripping naturalized citizens of their citizenship so that they can be deported. Hey, you know what the Mustache Man's first attempt to quote-unquote solve the so-called Jewish problem was? It was mass deportations. And then, most countries refused to take the refugees. So then, you know what he defaulted to? Yeah, genocide. Which side of the political aisle the one that the creationists align themselves with, or the other side is the side that's currently at like proto-Hitler stage 1. Yeah, it's not the quote-unquote evolutionists. So, yeah, maybe you should come up with a different analogy.
I'm sure they'd blame the evolutionists anyway, of course.
Well, obviously.
Somehow, the evolutionists' fault, just even though it's them doing it, you know.
Well, actually, no, because they would encourage this. They just won't notice that that's exactly what was going on in Germany pre-World War II, was attempted mass deportations of Jews. Yeah, they're just gonna. They're not even gonna notice it because they're enthusiastically in favor of deporting people who are even citizens by stripping their citizenship. Yep. Like, hey, if you think it can't happen here, you're wrong. It already is.
Because the entire evolutionist community, the ACLU, the National Center for Science Education, Eugenie Scott and her whole crew came down on him like thunder. Then phone calls from the Smithsonian were going every day to...
Yes, well, they should have been. It was a gross breach of ethics.
National Institutes of Health calling for his resignation.
Yeah.
Dr. Stern...
Yeah. When you violate the ethical code under which you're supposed to operate a paper, you should be fired from that job.
That's crazy, dog.
Sternberg is going to be featured in the new movie Expelled.
The new movie Expelled.
Hey, when he gave this talk, that was an accurate statement. We're not going to fault him for being in the past.
No. I'm not. I'm just.
Are you just feeling old?
This makes me feel old.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
That statement, the new film Expelled. Oh, that hurt.
You know what was a fun fact about the movie Expelled? Basically, none of it held up to scrutiny.
That's true.
It was basically just like 2 hours or something of absolute nonsense that none of it held up.
It was, a lot of creationists and intelligent design proponents whining that they got fired for breaching codes of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
It had that stupid quote that I hate.
Or even whining that their department was shuttered because it was no longer needed and their contract wasn't renewed. That was another thing. I was like, man, they closed down the microscopy lab because I'm a creationist. It's like, yeah, did they start up a new one after you left? Because if not, then it probably wasn't because you're a creationist.
Yeah. Had that Richard Dawkins clip that I hate.
Oh, yeah, where he was taken grossly out of context.
Like, it literally says it. Like, I don't know how anyone can watch that and be like, yeah, he says that aliens created life. Like, no,
he definitely didn't say that.
Ears. He didn't say that.
Yeah, that's right up there with the Robertson Jenis getting Kate Mulgrew into his geocentrism documentary by lying to her.
Oh, that's right. He did that to like Lawrence Krauss and Michio Kaku, didn't he?
Yeah, they had interviews in that documentary. But Kate Mulgrew, Captain Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, she was the narrator. Because he lied to her about what it was about. And if you listen to her narration, you can see how all of it has been like re-edited to become a geocentric documentary, but how she could have said all those lines without realizing that that's what was going on.
That's crazy.
And when it came out, she was like, this is not what I signed up for. I did not know that this is what that is going to be. So he even lied to the narrator just so he could get a Star Trek captain on.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really shady and really, really scummy. It's almost like there's a through line between different kinds of pseudoscientist nonsense peddlers, that they're really shady and scummy and have no ethics whatsoever. Weird, isn't it?
That is pretty wild. I would have never guessed.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, but we are getting to the point where it is time to wrap up. We're actually probably a little bit over. Jackson, you have anything coming up that you want to tell people about? I know it's only been a couple weeks, but...
I'd like to have something coming up. I probably shilled the Rotifer's Tale last time I was on, and it still hasn't come out.
Well, hey, that's okay. Last time you came on, it was only a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm supposed to, I'm slated to teach 3 classes in the spring, and so I am rapidly preparing for 3 classes in the spring, and that has consumed effectively all of my time. So I haven't written. I think I said last time that I I did write a script. So I wrote my monthly YouTube script, just not for my channel. I wrote it for somebody else.
Okay.
And I'll tell you whenever it comes out. But yeah,
I have
so
a feeling I know who it is anyway.
yeah, I think I've told you. I think I've
Mhm.
told you, and probably the others. But yeah, so the Roadfish Tale. Whenever I get a free moment, I'll work that out. Same old Thursday live stream, same as always. We're watching a video from actually back in the day that Dr. Jackson right here is. Um, Camilla found a CD, a
Oh.
Haranyaya um movie from
Oh.
2006. Yeah,
Interesting.
and so we're watching that, and it's the most like factless thing I think I've ever watched.
No
It's
surprise
really
there.
funny, Dapper. I mean, it's like there's almost no arguments. They're literally just showing pictures
Mhm.
of modern and fossil organisms. And the funniest thing about this is what is not only well, you remember the whole fiasco with the frick the bugs on the fishing lures. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, where he
The whole
used
bit with the
fishing
fishing lures.
lures as
Right.
a bug. Yeah,
So they have used multiple fake fossils,
fun.
multiple fake fossils, for one thing. And not only have they used multiple fake fossils, they have put up the incorrect living organism next to a fossil.
Oof.
So they said, uh, so for instance, they called Pachypleurosaurus a lizard.
Nope.
They also put up a fossil herring relative, i.e., the Nidea from the Green River Formation, which is a little herring relative. They put it up next to a picture of a tarpon,
Hmm.
which is in a different order of fish.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not cool.
yeah. They also what else they do? Something else that
Well,
was
you know
really
what?
stupid.
Instead of giving all the examples here, people should go watch your show where you give all the examples in real
Oh,
time with the pictures.
that's
So
true.
don't
They also
spoil it
showed
for people.
a pipefish and a trumpetfish.
Oh no, those are very different. All right, so is
Yeah.
there
So anyway, so if you want to
anything
see a
else coming
bunch
up?
more of those, go watch that.
All right. So let's take a look at what is coming up on this channel. So on Thursday, we're going to be doing a premiere of Jackson and I's talk with a creationist named Terry. You remember that one, don't you,
Yay,
Jackson?
Terry.
Yeah.
God,
So
wait, you're premiering that? Oh my God, that was
what?
so long ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to steal your views.
I I think it's
So,
okay, Dapper. I give you full and complete permission to post anything from my channel. Oh my
oh,
gosh,
okay.
that conversation was.
I'm gonna take all of your videos now. They're all gonna be mine.
Oh, okay. I mean, no, never mind. Never mind. I was gonna say something.
But yes, we're gonna be premiering that.
That
That is gonna
conversation was
be
very frustrating.
yeah, it was. But I overall I kind of like Terry. I don't think he's that bad of a guy.
I had to block him on Twitter
Oh
because
well,
he's
then maybe
very
I'm wrong.
annoying.
Well,
He was
he didn't annoy me.
very annoying on Twitter.
So that is going to be on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday, over on Top Hats Off, we're going to be showing that, or we're going to be playing that game that we had the teaser trailer for. We came forth to contemplate the stars. That is going to be starting at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. That is going to feature me, Jordan, Chesh, FTFE, Thierry Rana, that is Zerolon, and Necro from both my chat and from Chesh's channel. So, if you like Star Trek, if you like that group of people, if you just like me, please come hang out. We recently got channel memberships and super chats enabled, so you can join the channel there if you want to. You can go become an ensign, get a cool little Starfleet badge next to your name. You can give me the occasional super chat. And I'm hoping to eventually get that channel up to 1,000 subscribers, so we can also get things like super chat goals and whatnot. So yeah, but it's a fun time. Then on Saturday, we're going to be doing another Dapper Reacts, but this time we're going to be taking a look at Bodhi Hodge's book about the Tower of Babel. And probably going to be really dumb. I have invited Vishanti and Kip Davis. I am not sure if both of those people are going to be there, or if only one, or technically if even one of them. but I will be double checking with them over the course of the week to see. But they are both invited. So, and that is going to be more linguistically focused than we normally get, because that was kind of the point of getting that book. So yeah, and that was actually a super chat goal that you guys got previously, was if you give enough super chats of the right value, I will get and respond to that book. There's some parts I'm not going to respond to, like what's the proper way to pronounce Babel? I don't care. I do not care about that question. So, and besides, Bodhi's answer is like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, okay, thanks, Bodhi. You didn't need a chapter to say that. But that is going to be then. And then on Tuesday, I need to double check to see what day or which Tuesday it's going to be. Because I think it's going to be Matt with Maddie. Yes. Tuesday the 17th at this time should be Matt with Maddie. And then do remember on the 24th, that is Christmas Eve, although technically it will be Christmas here. I'm going to be doing a Kent with Bent. And then on the 31st, I'm going to be, instead of doing one of my regular shows, I'm going to be doing a New Year's thing where we try to be live for about 4 hours so that everyone in the continental contiguous US, as well as everyone in Canada, and I believe Mexico, gets a New Year wish from me on their New Year's, hour at least. It probably won't be down to the minute, but hey, it'll be close. So that is what's coming up. If you are interested, come hang out over on the Dapper Dinosaur Discord server. That's only for patrons and members. And we're going to be watching 5 episodes of Power Ranger Samurai on 1.25 speed. So, there you go. All right, bye everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and don't get put in a camp. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovend, Thurgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Eleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Wallace, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.